Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Alicia Brashay. I'm from Cosmic Gateway, and this is in conjunction with World Unity Week. I'm so delighted to be sitting here once again with Rebecca Rose. Just seeing your smile has absolutely brightened up my day, and what a way to start the final day of World Unity Week to have you here. So for those who aren't familiar with Rebecca Rose, she's a multi-dimensional galactic experiencer, and she works as an intuitive seer and a channel, an amazing one at that. She has very unique experiences with quantum light language and Akashic records, and she works with clients and has done for many years. There's a lot of depth to Rebecca's journey and story, as she's a lifelong abductee, and she was taken to work in some of the dark government programs as a child. And we're not going to be going too much in depth about that today because we only have an hour, but I would encourage you all to go and have a look. I have recorded multiple interviews with Rebecca where she goes into depth and talks about her life's journey, and I highly recommend that. So can I just say, there's so much to your story. You've had experiences in the secret space program, you've been off planet Mars, Moon, Planet X, all, you've absolutely traveled the entire cosmos, and you've come back to reawaken, restore those memories, and to help other people as they go through that process and journey too. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here again. And I always feel so humbled by your introductions. Like, oh, is that me? Thank you. Yeah, likewise. Someday I'll be introducing you, and I'll return the favor. So yeah, thanks for having me this week.
Today's topic, you're going to talk about the soul's journey and the Akashic records, and keeping it I guess relevant to what's happening on the planet right now, so we can get a grasp of it. And just as a side note, I have done a pre-record with Rebecca and Dale Holmes, which will be up on my YouTube channel in a few days, so please go and have a look out for that. I'll just sort of put that in there. But where to begin, Rebecca? I'll let you
begin.
Yeah.
Well, so gosh, in my journey as an Akashic reader, an intuitive reader that works in the Akashic records, I'm noticing some themes coming up with clients over and over and over again. And it's so fascinating to me because I see many clients every week, and I can kind of get a read on what's happening a little bit more collectively, or at least my slice of what I am experiencing with folks. And people are awakening at this really accelerated rate. I feel like I've had so many, and I bet you have too, come to you throughout the past, even just the past few months, saying, oh my God, 2020, I just like everything, like I went down into this tunnel and this rabbit hole, and I found out all these things, and I'm seeing all these things I never saw before. And everybody's got a unique perspective on that. It's unique to everyone going through this, but I would say there's a massive shift going on here. It's really exciting and really heartening. I see the couple of themes. I'll just be in brief here. I think that Atlantis is really trying to get cleared out so humanity can get lighter. Like, we're clearing a lot of past life stuff from Atlantis, a lot of dark template, because a lot of what's been going on recently has been strengthening that darker duality template, going all the way back to Atlantean times. And then what I'm also seeing, and this is a little more recently in the past month or so, a lot of Lemurian energy wanting to come back up and be reclaimed. Because there we find so much of the ascended human template, or humanity in a more balanced place, in humanity where we were using the technologies of consciousness there for daily life in a way that we have forgotten. And that's exciting to me to think about the power we have as co-creators to bring our awareness and our intent and our vision into play now in our individual lives and our collective, to change what we might call a timeline, a frequency, about where we're going with all of this chaos. It looks like chaos on the surface all the time. Like, what is happening here? But inside of this, I feel like is a lot of light. In we are being those who choose to be. We have a huge window of opportunity here to restore our light, to take back what's always been ours, and to relate that to my personal journey. Like, I've had, last couple of years have been, if you've been following along with my unfolding as I came forward to talk about my very dark experiences in dark arts programming over my childhood. I've had quite a quickening and quite a, I've been put to the test. Never thought I'd be talking publicly about these things, and my life has transformed. But what I would say about my work in the records, I think, has shown me, which is always about the journey of the soul and the soul's perspective. Sometimes people come to me and they've got a specific set of questions, but it's always taking the lens way out. So we're looking at not just this embodiment as Alicia and Rebecca, but what has been and what might be still going on in a parallel way, or for an individual in perspective of the soul. And what I learned for myself was like, wow, I feel like I really signed up to understand darkness in this lifetime. Like, from everything that happened with, my father being, had a high clearance in the military and then with the deep state. That's how I was vetted into all these projects, and many of them very dark. Montauk, working at the Dulce base, going to the moon and working with, at Darkfleet headquarters there was very, part of the galactic slave trade. Very, very dark stuff. But I feel like from my perspective now, I understand that I had to go into that dark belly to understand so many things. Like, how do I undo the system if I don't understand how it works? I think it was part of my soul's sort of menu for my lifetime as Rebecca. And then to be able to come back, like journeying through all that and getting memories back and owning what really happened to me, which I've been shutting out for a long time, allowed me to come back into a more powerful voice. I was living in the shadows and had a lot more, I don't know, like hiding energy and not feeling good about myself, and a lot of shame, a lot of like what we call kleshas in my tradition of Buddhism, all the defilements and degradations. Anyway, I have gained so much personal light as a result of going into all of that and everything I've been through. It's very fascinating to me and counterintuitive. Like, you wouldn't think that who would sign up to do that? I mean, it sounds crazy, and some people aren't going to like that if I say, we kind of sign up for the journey. That's not a popular thing to some people. So how to relate that to now is I would say, like, is this something we may need to go through in some way to we might not wake up unless there's some awful thing happening. Sometimes we you have to get into a car accident to really, wake up to what's going on in your life or something. I know I'll speak for myself. This has been a journey for me. Like, I needed hard, fast awakenings like that. So, yeah.
I absolutely see and resonate so deeply with what you're saying, and just that whole, I always go back to talking about the collective experience versus the individual experience. And I don't know if you've done this as well over the last, let's say, 18 months, monitoring through your work and watching what individuals are going through, but seeing the bigger picture and kind of correlating it to your own um, awakening and healing process and going through the darkness to come back into light. Because from what I'm hearing you talk about is that what we're seeing on the global scale stage can seem very dark, seem very heavy, but what it's trying to do is push the light through so things can come up and be exposed and then evolve, ultimately to come back into original blueprint or sovereignty, to be able to,
Yeah.
Goodness, there's so many things that I could say, and I just want to say this. I've had the opportunity to work with you in one of your sessions, and I highly recommend it. I came to you in a crisis moment. I'll be honest, I'll put my hand up and say that we all have them. But I knew in that moment that you were the person who could help me the most, and the work that you do is so powerful in validating and assisting and giving that bigger perspective. And I so enjoy my sit down and chats with you and connection with you, because I see you as a true inspiration of someone who can go through what the vast majority couldn't even comprehend in terms of going into that level of darkness, and the experiences that you've had, through your childhood, and then coming into to know who you are now. I think you're just a tremendous inspiration to think that someone's soul journey just in this lifetime, we haven't even taken in other factors of Rebecca through other times and existences, can go through that just in this phase of your life. We can all do that, and in time, in challenging times, people should look to people like you as inspiration to keep going and to go into those darker places, because there's beauty that comes out the other side. And I'm certainly not saying that, you're perfect and all that. We all go through our processes, but just the
Me
transform.
too. I have my own thing going on right now. I'm like, I have to remind myself of my higher knowledge and not get bogged down in whatever it may be. I'm totally human, you guys. I'm totally human. Yeah. I have to remind myself of my own best medicine often, daily. And I have guides who help me with that when I forget. Thankfully, I can chat with them, and I have support with them. And it's true. I mean, in the Akasha, we work with the past lives, but I say the Galactic Akashic records because we can also look at not just what has happened on Earth, but maybe what we have been or are doing in another, off world. Like we might say our starseed heritage, or so it's just so limitless. Really, what we can journey through to understand. I'm always all about the bigger perspective of my own life, anybody's life, and then the human story, the long spun story of our collective. So fascinating. Yeah.
Can you walk us through a little bit about, perhaps for people who aren't familiar with the term Akashic record, maybe if you could walk us through a little bit of explaining what that is and how it pertains to the individual, and if you can interweave like the galactic aspect into that, because I think from my perspective, the term Akashic record came to me, and I would say for a very long time, I would always just limit that to the human experience. And I think, yeah. And until you start to come into more remembrance of who you are on that, wider level, and then you realize that it's so much more vast than that. So yeah, could you step us through and explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. It's fascinating. And the term Akasha, what does that even mean? In Hindu cosmology, we take it back to that and say it means ether or just space. A lot of times, I mean, when I open the records, so to speak, I'm connecting with the Akasha through my consciousness. It's not, I think some people see a library and it's books, and it could be, maybe it is. When I first started learning about this, I mean, I never thought I'd be doing this for my day job. I didn't even believe in it. I was like, why would there be like a book of my life somewhere? Like, how could I go in and find out all that stuff? That's just silly. Right. I wasn't like, it's taken me many years to get where I am now. As an open-minded believer. So if there's skeptics out there, I hear you. There's basically, I have found and discovered on my own that there really is, you know, I would say a record of our actions and our, you know, things we've lived through and journeyed through and who we've been. If we want to talk about in you know, linear human terms, the past versus the now versus the future, a linear timeline, past life stuff is all over those records. And also the wider arc of the soul's journey, like what is it you keep coming, oftentimes we see patterns or how we recreate things, situations over lifetimes, trying to resolve maybe a wound or a pain that has not resolved. And sometimes that relates to health stuff, sometimes it relates, well, often to relational stuff or people who have journeyed with us over. So my father and I for sure go back into, you know, the Orion Wars and playing light and dark, man. Father, my nemesis. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, and his story, I mean, I could relate this galactically with the Akashic records. What I was shown, I was doing some reading about his life, and I was taken back to look at the, you know, the original Zeta Reticuli story. The Zetas, you know, a lot of you have heard of the Greys, different strains, and you know, the short Greys and tall Greys. And I was taken back to see a very wise group of beings, very stately and ancient and Zeta. You know, what I would call the original Zeta stock. They were very ascended people. And then this sort of dark archonic force came in and sort of like, just like seeing what would happen, what happens if we inject, you know, darkness into this vein, and produced a group that was eventually forced to leave because of this malevolent influence that they were bringing. They've been polluted. I don't know how to say it, but my dad's heritage goes back into there. He died, passed away last year. He's a Zeta hybrid. Turned up, he came out, he did some lifetimes with the dark and came out of Rigel as a not so nice gray, that he has been sort of manifested as in this form, you know, tandem with his human form. That's what I would see sometimes as a child with that. Anyway, kind of interesting about what we can learn about our galactic heritage, if you like. Where have we been on other worlds, or have we had maybe family? You know, a lot of you maybe watching have related with Alicia. You know, I'm sure you have contacted, have you, you know, galactic family. Yeah. So there's just so much. There's so much to it. I'm just endlessly fascinated because I get, this is where I kind of tend to do my work, right? So I like learn so much from my client sessions. I have no idea. Wow. So I hope does that give a little bit of an overview of things.
Yeah, that was perfect. And I love you speak my language, you know, because I'm all about the soul's journey and understanding that. And when we understand that, then we can understand ourselves better as a human form in this body, in this time right now. And I think it's important because I keep getting this, you know, when you tap into like, you get downloads, but they're feeling, and then you try and put the feeling into some sort of visual and then try and articulate it. But it's like this culmination point, this compression point of where a lot of us are at in our journey to make sense of it all so that we can heal and resolve and then kind of move forward as humanity moves forward. That's kind of how I see it. It's this bringing it all together of past and future and present, and like trying to embody more light through that process. So there's there's this aspect of our timelines that are converging. I don't know the language. I just keep going like this. It's like there's this process of coming together. There's this process of coming together in unity, and I think World Unity Week and coming together, united as a collective, really has to start on an individual level to be able to do that as a collective level.
Well
That's what I'm
said.
getting. I'm like, I know I'm getting somewhere with this.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
that's why I
Yeah,
see
I mean,
work is important. Sorry, what were you saying?
no, I was just gonna say as you were speaking, I mean, I could, it's so, yeah. Where we've been and where we've gone is so influential, and now what we're, I mean, what we're all integrating. When I'm as I'm healing myself, it's not just for me. It's like as you heal yourself, it come into your light. I could say that a different way. As I've worked with becoming more empowered, more sovereign, more free, and regain more of my co-creative power, it's not just me that I influence. It's my family members who are, they're struggling people. They get some of this. It's a frequency, it's a vibration that travels forwards and backs through your bloodline and also into the collective. It influences your energy field. Therefore, when you walk around in the world, it's doing things in your energy field where you relate with people that you walk by on the street, and they might, whoa, who knows what happens, how energy travels, how it transmits, how we're transceivers of energy all the time, or better or worse.
Yeah. And it really is about that ripple effect, isn't it? Because, um, you know, I'm sure you spoke, I think it's in the upcoming. I'm like, when did you say it? But you were giving a specific example around how the healing that you've done has impacted your mum, and that it's a lot to do with like the intergenerational stuff that we're working through on a family bloodline level, on a galactic. There's so many different layers to this. Um, which it kind of goes into, I want to kind of move into timelines, because I know that you have such extensive knowledge about talking about the altering of timelines, considering that was, in your, I was going to say former life. That's very bizarre. In your earlier life.
Yeah, my former life indeed. Um, yeah, the timeline question. I feel like that's a kind of buzzword these days in certain circles. When I was in Montauk, and bless that with light, every time I say that word, um, they were doing experiments in time and finding ways to go into the past and alter things that had been done in the past to change the present. So going back to a different moment in time, and yeah, to change anything. What happens if I twiddle with this in this little scenario that happened, 100 years ago? What does it change now in what's going on for humanity? Or into, okay, if we do this XYZ action now, what happens 100 years from now? What happens next year? What happens 10 years from now? What happens when we go into a different frequency in space? Can we keep people out there? Can we create a timeline where something else is happening? How does this run parallel to time as we conceive it, our construct of time here in third density? It's so fast. Again, very fascinating. And my language will ultimately fail here. My linear language will grow insufficient to describe what I understand more intuitively in a different part of my brain. But it gets really swimming about the time and timelines, and time isn't fixed the way we think that it is. And that's a hard one to wrap your head around, because it really helps us have fixed time to move from breakfast to dinner and sleep. Like, I'm supposed to show up and meet you at 4 p.m. on my Thursday, and it's your 7 a.m. on Friday, but we're at the same moment in time. I mean, really?
Yeah,
Okay, this is weird right there. When I was on Mars Defense Force, for such a long time, working I was a very mind-controlled, mechanized asset, what some people would call a super soldier. We were infiltrated by a group of cyborg super soldiers from the future. And our commanders had intentionally introduced this group to see what we would do. Fascinating. So in essence, we were having this back and forth. Like I remember being pulled into this timeline of, it was very, I can't even say dark, because there wasn't that dark, degraded, depraved human energy, but it was all AI, all these people. They had white sort of metallic bodies and completely AI. They were devoid of sentience. And back and forth, we would kind of war and spar to see what would happen. Again, the commanders wanted to know what would happen. In the end, we kind of won, and we found out what their weakness was, and they couldn't think for themselves. That was a weakness. Anyway, I mean, this is fascinating to me. So how could we have been taken out into this other point in time? I remember a very almost artistic in a postmodern way, this architecture that seemed, it was oblong and white and again, kind of metallic, and there were kind of trees and nature, but it was all sterilized. And I think this was created by the Japanese, this particular timeline experience with these cyborgs. Anyway, I mean, it's totally bizarre, but what I learned out there is how malleable it actually is. And I've been trying in my own life now, and back in this lifetime, I saw this life, to remember that as a point of departure for my own co-creations as a human, Rebecca, now. So outcomes aren't fixed. The path isn't fixed. We get so hung up on our limitations that we forget what we're able to create and how our vision, our intent create things all the time. I mean, we're creating our thoughts and our beliefs, and our actions are always creating our reality. And that can seem like a platitude, but I mean, I look at that and I go, yeah, that's really, like, for me, is that true? Oh, it's so true. You know, what am I magnetizing as a result of focusing on the negative, possibly, or what am I manifesting? So it in a more, scaling that whole big conversation about time and timelines and off-world wars and hidden agendas down to my human sort of daily doings in this very humble way. I think about that so often, and kind of ping myself on the shoulder. Hey, sweetie, remember this. We're taught to be limited in our thinking and in our actions, in our voice, in our power, in our projections, our infinite creations, always limited. 3D is limited if we respond like Pavlov's dogs to our training. What I see over and over again in the Akashic records is the guides come in and say, remember, you don't have to know the steps to get there, but you have to know what you want. This is to create what you want. Mm-hmm. So as I said, I think on our last interview, like, we don't have to use dark technology and torture people to figure out how to change our outcomes. I mean, we can learn to open up. We're all being called to open up our consciousness now, to me, I always feel like the best way I can spend my time in so many ways is by developing my own consciousness, which again, related to the Akasha, space and ether, unlimited. We are that, we are that, we are that. I've spent thousands of hours on a meditation cushion. I've learned so much in silence and stillness, working with my own mind. It has been very ugly. In the beginning, it's very difficult and scary to do that, right? Anybody who's gone into a meditation path knows this. It's like, what? Yeah, I've learned so much about that. And going back into the what I'm seeing in the sessions too is, like, particularly with the Lemurian technologies of consciousness, they had that in Atlantis too, the ascended aspects of Atlantis. People were using their minds, their intention, coupled with feeling, vibration, to create. Do you need more than that? Our minds will tell us that. The matrix will tell us that. You have to know all the steps to get where you want to go. Actually, you better just know where you want to go.
Mm.
And connect that with your heart. Do it every day. Have the vision, have the feeling. Close your eyes. Can you see what you want? Can you see what you want? Can you make it a prayer that you see what you want and know what you want? And use it for your own life. But ultimately, we use that to come back into unity. We come into co-creative consciousness together to create the world that we want to live in. I know that I've made it sound really simple, and people be like, well, I don't know. But really, there's so much to explore yet that remains uncharted territory in our human development of consciousness, in my opinion.
Mm. Oh my goodness, this has sparked so many questions. Like, where do I go now?
Well,
You talk my favorite language and my favorite topics, timelines, journey of the soul. But I'm going to bring this up, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just speaking out loud something that's been like playing in my head, provoked from a lot of the conversations from World Unity Week. I think David Icke touched on this. There's a few people in the top of my mind that have touched on exactly what you said, and that's how beautiful we're working as a mini collective right now in these voices. I think Aaron and Tyler touched on collective timelines as well, and they were sharing a little bit about how in some of the darker programs they were looking into reading timelines for the collective to see where their agenda had won.
yeah.
And every time they read it, it came back that they hadn't, that the light would win. And they would over and over look into this, and every time hoping for a different outcome, but it never was. It was never the outcome that was in favor for them. And so there's different aspects that have come in that come back to my mind, but I'll get to it's kind of a question and a pondering all at the same time, so bear with me. and when you look at this sort of, and I totally agree with you, this co-creative force that we have when we can tap into our heart and our consciousness and our energy field and be the creators of our own reality, because I truly believe that through our energy and frequency, we're working within our own quantum field to have that reflect back in the experience. But then there's also that aspect of the pre-written destiny of our soul's journey. How from your perspective and the work that you do, how does that come together, in terms of, like, there are things that we are written to experience and achieve in a lifetime connected to others, and then the overlay of being able to create our reality. Can you talk on that a bit? This is where my mind always goes back to trying to understand. I've been trying to understand this for years. So if you could,
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, what is sort of preordained and what is yeah. I know, this is juicy. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to go there. Yeah, well, we do sign up for certain things, but then when those certain things come in a certain way, that's the magic moment. Decide what you want to do with it. What's this hand of cards? Hey, how do I want to play? So certain things are, but then we have so much unique power within that. It's not like it's proverbially, carved in stone. So this little element might come in, and that might be, is that a predestined thing for you to kind of dance with in your life? Yeah, sure. What dance do you want to do with it? How do you want to, do you want to welcome it? Do you want to shut it down? Do you want to run away? Do you want to lose your life? Do you want to, what do you want to do? I think we still have choices. I think that's the short thing that I would say, the pith answer would be, we have choices still within that. It's, oh gosh, it's so, I feel you. I just got that. This is it's so, there's many factors. There's so many factors involved. Where have you been? Where have we been? How is the past affecting the now? What resources? How am I resourced? resource to respond to this maybe preordained moment. How eyes open am I to what's going on? So I feel like we're still in our choice points within that certain predestined menu. Does that make sense?
Perfect answer. Yeah. I mean, that's the conclusion that I come back to time and time again.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to nut this conversation out with someone who could.
Yeah.
I didn't want to bring it up with David Icke because he was on a roll, but like I got off that interview and he was talking about exactly what you were speaking about, the creation, and then at the same, creating our own reality, but at the same time he believed, and I think I want to echo this back because I think this is echoed in so many people's experience, that he believed as a child, or he knew as a child, that he was here on this planet to do something important, and he had to work out what that was along the way, and I as we all do. And so after I spoke with him, I was trying to like piece together, I wonder what his perspective, maybe I'll get a chance one day in the future, but I'm glad that we're here now and I can throw that question to you because of the work that you do, and you would get to see the timelines and you would get to see, the past and, the present, the future.
And I mean, isn't that beautiful if we have awareness of like, oh, wait, I have a choice point here. What happens if, or what do I feel? What do I see intuitively happening if I say yes to this? What happens if I say no? Can I see? How does it feel? Can I tune in inwardly to kind of get a read on that? To make more conscious decisions and say also, well, if I say yes or no, or move this way or that, go right or left, I can always change my mind. Well, sometimes that's not so easy, but there are possibilities. I remind myself of this all the time. Well, you could decide to do X, Y, Z, and if it doesn't work out, then you learn something and there's still going to be options. Like I'm always reminding myself not to get into that cage of limitation and set in stoneness. Like I come from New England in the US, it's like, this is how it is. It's always been this way. We don't do it any different. It's very tradition. I'm sure there's lots of other places on the world where this is the case, right? New England, it's like those people don't leave where, they don't leave where they were born from, or they don't. There's the tradition. There's only one way. So anyway, I know I'm kind of.
No, that's great. I'm so grateful for your response in that. And there's so much I could talk about, but I do want to continue on because I want to talk off world for a bit, just because in light of what's happening not that I'm in the loop right now, but in light of what's happening in the mainstream media and a potential disclosure or partial disclosure. And I think really want to highlight, in my opinion, because of so much information that is out there in varying degrees, in my opinion, to be able to speak to the real experiences, to get a real truth, the truth to be heard from the people who actually interface and have these experiences, so that people can understand it if they're new to it or familiar, or an experiencer themselves thinking that they're going crazy. I think that we redirect this collective in a positive way through voices like yourself, sharing and let me say bravely sharing personal journey for the purpose of healing and encouragement for others. And the more people that speak up and out like yourself, it gives confidence to more and more. So that wasn't a question, I realize that, but can we redirect this conversation to talk about off-world? And I guess maybe if I was to try and pinpoint a question, can you shed some light on the soul's journey of how we sort of came to Earth? I know it's individual, but maybe an example of yourself or someone else that you can share about. What fascinates me is like how we come from original the place of creation where the soul was created, and then how we end up on this planet called Earth. I think you see where I'm getting at with this question.
Yeah, like, oh gosh, okay, so oh gosh. Yeah. How do we speak to that in a way that is coherent and linear?
Let's throw linear out.
Yeah, can we just speak to it?
Yeah, let's just speak to it.
Yeah, what's coming through about that? Tenemos caneta, chumukan caneta, mukan makanina, chumukone, ichika, motan makanishki, the kishtina, kanikato, sichikila, katishikuna, ana anjita, anikinishikatinina, Bani Kuchimukonika, Shikin, Kishikina, Tishtina. You all come from so many star systems, it would be so difficult to write this down in one sentence. You've all been players in many realms, and you've all agreed to contract on this important assignment. You're all cosmic dancers. You're just trying to get your landlines back on Earth. So I'm feeling a lot of playful energy in this delivery, like there's so much light in this. But we're not, I mean, I think it's just a hard one for me to pin down. If I look at my own journey, even, I would say that, I don't come from one place alone, but many different places. I know I traced myself back to, Syrian and the Orion Wars, for sure, like working angles with Dad. And I felt like I had failed. For me, I felt like I had failed. I failed and we lost. If we're talking about duality is kind of about fighting. Unity is about, co-creative coming togetherness, oneness, if you like. I felt like I just totally effed up. And I think I've been coming around trying to work it out so that the light would, so to speak, win. Is this that magic moment? Is this part of that? Is this me volunteering? If we go back to Galactic Wars, I flunked, man. So I'm going to go back to Earth and, many other journeys in between. Some of them, I was playing Team Dark in Atlantis for a while. So I guess I'll go do this. It's not so bad. So doesn't that give you that little brief little like drive-by answer there? I'll shed a little more light about, well, why were the Greys coming in? I mean, there was things happening with the Greys in utero when I was not even born. Let's make more sense with some of my starting off points about why. If I just give you some of that armature of my own soul's journey.
Yes, please.
But if you ask me to tell you all the rest stops and all the waypoints, the high points, the peaks and valleys, and the cosmic gas stations I stopped at in between, I wouldn't be able to even log that yet. But I feel like I'm an infant like learning. I'm like so thirsty to keep knowing more. And it's like, why do I have to do all this mundane stuff? Why is the refrigerator repairman having to come? Oh, why do I have to balance my books and pay taxes? Could I just keep exploring this? This is much more interesting.
I'm with you right there.
I know everybody's probably like going, yeah, she's so right.
I love that.
Well, I don't know if we answered your question, but that's my best stab at its origins. And
that was perfect. And I know that these are big questions, and it always comes back to the individual journey of what you just said, in constantly trying to explore and understand your own soul's path and where it has been. And it gives so much light into understanding yourself in this human form and this human incarnation. But I love when you channel in light language. That is like my absolute favorite part, because there's so much joyful energy that comes through, and I could feel that. And what I sense and pick up when you were in that space was we are at a joyful time, regardless of how heavy or dark or dense or chaotic it may seem on the surface right now. But, we did all choose to come here at this time, for various reasons. And I think that there's so much more beauty that will come beyond this phase in time. Can you speak to any sort of insights or thoughts about humanity moving into a more galactic society in the future?
Mm, yeah, just pausing to see more clearly. And I can see that, more peaceable kingdom, queendom, and more peaceable society, more equanimous society. Um, I can see it. And if, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's coming. And it's been here before. We know we can do this. We know that past has a way of repeating itself. Usually we say that in sort of tongue-in-cheek way,
Yeah.
maybe. But this is, this is, yeah, I can feel how I've been caught in my guide with my guides. They say the ancient future coming back. This is so much a part of what has been. It's going to be again, and it is already. If you, a lot of us here, I mean, we have heritage that is not necessarily earthbound. We are that. We're magnetizing more of our galactic brothers and sisters. I feel to kind of join us here more out in the open. Sometimes if you're like mainlining the news, you're not going to probably go to bed with that like idea in your head. But as I feel it now, there's a powerful heart vibration that goes back into past times and parallel times and are now leading into our future. Maybe that goes back into what's been said by myself and others, like, can you see that? Can you feel that? Can you desire that with your whole heart? You will create that. You will be the bridge to that. And I think that more people who are coming out of that. I remember when I started like being public about what I was doing as a seer, and I was so horrified that like people were going to think I was crazy. I'm like, well, I'm talking openly about all kinds of things. Like, I don't think twice about it. I mean, the more people are talking about this, and the more this leaks out in unusual ways to conventional places, as we have the dialogues about this big existence we're having with not just, how many billions of galaxies are there? We don't even know. If we could possibly think we're the only life form in all of that, I mean, that's hubris, human hubris. To think that they're not already here is, I mean, of course we know that they're here, but I feel like this sort of like divorce from all that, from the, by our training in the matrix and how there's been like a frequency fence keeping all this at bay somehow in a darkly magical way. That's not going to keep going. I also don't watch the news, so it's easier for me to say that. Like I don't keep up with what's going on so much out there. I'm more interested in other possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I have an awareness of it, but it very rarely seeps into my reality.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back to something that you said, and you were talking about how the past has a way of representing itself and coming back around. And what I got a glimpse into as you were feeling and seeing into that was kind of going back to talking about Atlantis and Lemuria and kind of where we began in this conversation as to the work that's been happening to clear and heal timelines and experiences that as a soul we have gone through on different civilizations on this earth. But on the flip side of healing that, accessing this peaceful civilization that is working in unity consciousness, that is working with their own consciousness and telepathy and all these things that I do believe we all have access to. The templates reside within us and on the planet. Is there anything that you can add to that? Once again, my apologies in like not asking a direct question, but sort of.
I tell you, you don't need. I'm so yeah. I'm like, you don't need to. I speak that language. Like I got it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I don't need so much of linear questioning, but yeah, gosh, yes, and yes. Oh, I just got so excited by that. Yeah, I think I lost my linear page almost there. Oh my God. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I did.
No,
Wow.
no.
I did. I lost my
Is
page.
that is that is that a I use the word template. Is that a
Oh, right.
energy?
Like,
Yeah,
where did we just go? I just went like 100 million years in the future. I was like, where am I back here? Yeah, I mean, it is written inside of us. It's in our it's in our DNA. It's all inside of us. It's in our lived experiences from so many lifetimes. It's like, it's crazy that we always think it's out there somewhere. It's just right here. Like, look inside yourselves. It's right there. We are that. We are all of that. I mean, I know you know that, but it can seem again like a platitude if we're kind of just trying to survive in this chaotic time. And I'm not in any of this that I've said today would like not to make light of the way that people are really suffering right now. I mean, I see clients who are very, except their lives are very much a struggle right now as a result of things that are happening. So, but we do have, once we kind of have some more space in our awareness and in our lives, just even for a minute to contemplate something other than what's in mainstream news and what might be at our job site or whatever our daily reality is. I have mine here. There's very, remarkable things going on, not in the best way around me. Just take that pause and remember that it's inside of us, and it goes way back. I mean, as I trace it, I mean, we could trace it all the way back to source, which we are part of, into Lemuria. Lemuria keeps coming up. It's written in places on our planet. It's written in the template of the earth. The blueprint of what we might call the ascended human is wed to the blueprint of the ascended planet. They're wed like a mother and baby, and that's irreversible. It's immutable. It's forever. Just as we're wed to our, in many ways as humans, we're wed to our sun and the very ascended light codes within the sun of our solar system. So much to that. We're not just walking around as separate entities without influence from the earth, the planet, the heavens, sky, the elements. I mean, we can draw on so many resources, but I know we forget. And developing our consciousness, if we've not been able to, maybe we've got, a single mom and we have kids and we're trying to make money. I mean, yeah, you're not going to sit down and have time to develop your consciousness. So what do? We're still being called to that. So there must be a way. There must be a way. And finding that way will be an individual pathway for each person, but whatever way it looks like for you to take a little bit and then more and a little baby step into regathering your own power within this. I think first you have to have the belief that you do have some power, some little piece of something, even if you're in the darkest night of despair and want to leave the planet. I see lots of starseeds who do not want to be on this planet. They will not ground into the earth. It makes living here really, really tough when you're not able to be stabilized by the earth frequencies and to feel that healing energy from Gaia. makes a really shitty world here. So I just, I guess I want to speak to the common person. Like, I feel you, you know, it's hard out there. It's not all love and roses. It's a shit show in many ways, but we're being called to see through that and remember that we, as I feel like I say this over and over, that we are the medicine of our times.
I love that statement. That's such a powerful statement. And I'm glad that you spoke to the, you know, to the individual souls who are probably watching this, who gravitate towards you. It hasn't been an easy path for you, hasn't been an easy path for me. We see you, you know, and there is light, there is good, there is purpose to it, but it doesn't take away from the personal challenges and struggles. But ultimately, in that wider perspective that we always like to go to, because I don't know about you, Rebecca, but it's the bigger perspective that always got me through in those dark nights of the soul.
Completely. I would be like, I would be an addict if I would not be this woman you see here if I didn't have that perspective. So by all means, find a compassionate way to find it. It's there. I swear it's there. I promise. Yeah.
I know that we're running out of time, but I
out
am
of
gonna but you know what, I'm gonna break the rules. Just a little while longer. Because something is really at me to ask you this question. And you touched on DNA written within the code of our DNA. We haven't gone there. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of DNA? I know that you've spoken. Yeah.
Oh boy, you just want to do this in a couple minutes. Alicia, really? You just have a couple minutes to talk about that. Okay. What part?
Right now, I'm not running on linear time, so I'm going to completely ignore the clock, and we're just going to talk about DNAs.
Okay. Well, what came to mind immediately, I have to say, was not that illuminated, because I immediately flashed on all my work in the dark projects for, DNA, hot commodity, people. You got stars, what kind of DNA do you have? Well, I have dark reptilian DNA in my mother's side of the family with a lot of ritual abuse. Boy, that was wanted for super soldiering me. That they like the Draco DNA. But the DNA is a hot commodity as far as the galactic, all the cloning and all the hybridization. But I don't know if that's really what you wanted to talk about.
No, I do. I want you to give us a big picture of it, not just the light aspect of it, because you have in your experience, that was all about your soul's journey to experience growth, as all of us are. So yeah, I definitely don't want you to negate the darker aspect of it, because it helps to paint a bigger picture. Yeah.
Well, it's like it's so interesting, because our uniqueness is written inside of our DNA, but so is our collective. So many elements of our collective past that have been forgotten, or we've been cut off from intentionally, are still sitting there waiting to be tapped. And many of us are learning to tap into that, what is actually written inside of us. If we consider that, we will be and are able to, as we go down the path of unity, able to tap in and tap more and more of that full embodiment of our heritage and our genetic expression. Yes, I'm here as an embodied expression of my biology, no doubt. But there's other parts that are they turned on yet? There's so much interesting, fascinating potentiality in that, and you can see it. Like when I'm sitting in meditation, I'm shown things like mathematical codes and sequencing of geometry and the creation math of the universe that is within ourselves. Is this fascinating to me, or what? I mean, the way that can be used, if we tap into what is that about, and you can't use your linear mind, you have to kind of work with the other parts of your brain that are more intuitive and in line with the Akasha, to understand that and to begin to see that everybody has the capacity to see, not just people like you and I. It's been kind of, we've been routed away from that, but that too is written inside of us. So, I mean, in the projects, the bosses, the Dark Lords, as I might call them, were very capable of splicing, dicing, putting back together all kinds of different life forms, taking out what they wanted, putting in what they wanted. And I have found too that through my own experience, your own DNA is changeable too. I mean, it's so interesting how that expression can change. Like we talk about, is it predetermined, or is it, is it destiny, or do we have anything to do with it? Do I have any say-so in how this plays out? Going back, I'll use this example of the Draco DNA that I got from my mother's side of the family. Literally, when my mother would come in to abuse me as a child, I would see her eyes would get like all, I used to see as a kid, reptilian. I knew she was like some other force was inside of her expressing, and she wouldn't remember her abusive episodes. Anyway, that goes back in this German bloodline. And when I was coming through this was earlier last year, I was in meditation, and I would have this sense of myself becoming this, I want to call it, now it's become a white dragon, a self aspect that manifests in that way, very very benevolent being, very equanimous. The energy is very stabilizing to me. When I asked my team and my higher self about this, what had happened, long story short, is they said, you changed your DNA, because this being that I have now inside of me that expresses was that regressed reptilian energy gone into light through the work I've done on myself. I mean, is this far out or what? I mean, this is a crazy example, right? I mean, I just went, what? What do you mean I can change that? What are you talking about? And of course, there's my limited mind going, can you do this? And I started looking online, and I was like trying to do some discerning research about, does our science say you can do that? I'm like, oh, sure enough, you can change your DNA. Oh, look at me. I don't research these things. I don't know. I mean, probably a scientist out there would be laughing at me saying, well, it's not really quite like that. But they would be laughing if I said, well, I actually manifest as a white reptilian. Like, yeah. No, there's my little theory on that.
I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that. I mean, I saw a client session, I don't know, in the last 6 months. And this stays in my mind because it's very similar, or it adds context to it. But I was doing, I do this kind of soul mapping, star mapping service where fractals or aspects will come, like I can see different fractals or aspects of people. And anyway, I had said to her prior to the session, sometimes I know if it's going to go into places that may make people feel uncomfortable. I probe them out first in conversation to know how much information I can bring through. And I said to her, are you aware of working with any reptilian energies? And I don't want to alarm you. And she wasn't. And I was like, oh, okay. It's just that I can feel this presence, and I just want to know in advance. And as soon as I connected in, there was this crocodile being, and I kept calling him reptilian, and he corrected me, and he said, I'm a reptile, not a reptilian, and I want that to be stated correctly. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay. And I don't have a lot of information, but I have correlated this with other practitioners who had similar experiences around the same time. And I think that's the cool thing, when we get together and kind of validate each other through the work that we do. But basically the essence of what I'm sharing is that he was talking about how he was around that client working with her because of his race of beings were primitive, what we would know as reptilian, and then transcended their energy and consciousness and DNA as a collective, and that they now help facilitate healers and people who work with them to rewrite the reptilian aspect of the human brain and how it goes into MK Ultra programming and deprogramming. It was the most fascinating thing. I mean, I could have. So when you just shared that refining of the DNA and the bloodline of your reptilian genetics and how that was transformed and overwritten, I think that just is, I don't know, I could talk about this topic forever. I think this is fascinating stuff.
It's so fascinating. So fascinating. Well, I was shown the creation story of this particular group that kind of, I mean, there's a reptilian group that came from, you know, in the Galactic Wars, went from Draco to Lyra to ostensibly, you know, overtake the Lyran collective, and they were invaders, but they were subsumed by the benevolent Lyran culture and they became, if we want to talk about, you know, duality, the light and dark team, they became light, if you want to, just a short answer. So they're always, the family of these beings surrounds me. They're like my family, and they come as white reptilian beings. Some of them have look a little bit more dragony. They have, each one is white, but their energy signature is, they might be in a, their individuality. I know them by each as like, this one has a more pinkish field, and this one has that more cerulean field, and this one has a cobalt blue field. And that's how, sort of how I identify them as unique. But their energy kind of blows me away when they, I mean, it's very loving. No, I always say the Draco for me is a super bad name, you know, in the solar system for all reptilians. And there are Draco that are not, they're not all wicked. I mean, mostly my experience with them has not been good. Um, but to write, I mean, it's hard when you meet any kind of reptoid being, you're kind of going, whoa. I mean, so there's, you know, I was picked up on Mars when my servitude on Mars. I was my craft went down. I was piloting, you know, I was on recon, and I was picked up. Might say stolen or saved, depending on whose point of view we're talking about. But this group of reptilian humanoids that had gone underground, and they had survived some kind of cataclysm. And speaking of DNA, they had become very regressed because there were so few of them left. They lived below surface, had no weapons, no technology we would think of, no craft. But they had used the technologies of consciousness. They had a spiritual relationship with the planet Mars that allowed them to grow some kind of food below ground. And they had some kind of, it felt like a sun. There was a watery oasis underground that I cannot believe I had. I mean, I was able to go to this place, and it was one of my best memories from being off world. Where am I going with this? Their DNA was they were trying to, they took me to figure out if they could use my biology or my technology to help save themselves. But the regressed DNA was problematic for them, and they didn't seem to know how to use me to their advantage, so to speak. Anyway, a little riff on all of that. Also trying to say that reptilian energies are not, you know, don't throw their baby out with the bathwater. They're not, even though they cannibalized me for parts in the end, I was a clone at that point. They weren't all bad. I remember eating around we were sitting in a circle, and we were eating, I don't remember what I was eating with them, but it was one of my fondest memories where the people I was with were not just actively harming me or controlling me. Interesting. So
Thank you, Rebecca. I don't even know why I get so emotional when you talk about these stories. There's something that triggers in me, and I could sit and listen to you share these stories off world all day.
I know, and we've taken it into cool, good overtime here. So
Yeah.
let's.
Oh, so I should have prefaced this, and well, I kind of did. What you have watched today, with this beautiful conversation with Rebecca Rose, is not even like a tip of the drop in the ocean of what is your journey, the work that you do, what you've shared, your testimony. I really encourage people to take this as the most brief overview possible, and then go and connect with your work in some capacity. There's various ways that people can do that. I will link in the description how people can follow your YouTube channel and connect to your website and on social media, and connect with you
Yeah.
through the work that you do. But if this has sparked something within you, I really encourage you to explore that and find out more. And really, just thank you, Rebecca, for your time today. Thank you for the work and service that you do for humanity. And
Oh, thank
just,
you. Gosh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for hosting all of us this whole week. Your very morning, early hour for me today. So thanks. Thanks everybody for joining us and going into these, pockets of weirdness and big, 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 big cosmic stories.
and they certainly are. And I think it's perfect timing that we speak to people like you to prepare the unraveling and the unfolding that we're going to go through as a human race. I believe in the
Yeah.
uncovering of it and then transforming it. So once again, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This has just been by far the best very early Friday morning I've had in a very long time. So thank you for that. And please keep an eye out for a pre-record video with Rebecca and Dale and myself, which will be coming out on my YouTube channel and on Facebook in a few days' time. So just sending endless amounts of love and gratitude to everyone, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you, and bye.